Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, Michael people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. The final month has arrived to start off a new week as I get reacquainted with you all on everything that's happening in sports, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as 2 Thursdays ago, I do welcome you guys and gals back because, yes, there has been a bit of a hiatus between myself and those who follow the podcast, the channel on YouTube, etc. And I'm going to get into all that in a matter of moments because obviously with so much to unpack and so much to get into, especially what has transpired in the NFL and college football, that just unto itself, that could be a podcast for each one of those sports. But I want to start off by saying this. I know I didn't have a podcast last week. I'm sure people will probably think back to Thanksgiving and say, I could see why JAYREELZ took the Thursday off because of Thanksgiving. And then the previous Monday, a week ago today, I did not have a podcast because yours truly has been involved in jury duty. So I didn't get to record the night before or even record that evening to put forth a podcast, which obviously here I am on the 1st of December. It is currently 9:55 p.m. So I'm not in my usual, I don't want to go as far as saying boisterous, but my usual tone when I come across the microphone. I'm a little bit more subdued, not because I want to, but of course I got to be conscious of who's around me because I do live in an apartment building. I just can't yell off the top of my lungs and I don't have soundproof protection around me to kind of drown out my bellowing loud voice. And as it is, of course, I have the missus and the puppy. So yes, it's a little bit of a different scenario for yours truly than it would be on a Monday morning. And with that being said, this week and even into next week, unless something changes, because with jury duty, I got selected. I'm certainly not happy about it. And obviously, I'm not going to get into what is or has transpired to date. Of course, I'm not allowed to do so. But with that being said, I know that the content may just kind of trickle in throughout the course of the week. If anybody's looking forward to the Wednesday live stream this week, it looks like it's going to be a no-go, barring a miracle. And this is also going to bleed into next week. So Monday, a week from today, you're going to have me and my usual self, loud, rambunctious. I know I said didn't say I was going to say that, right? Or even boisterous. But you know what I mean. You're going to get the normal JAYREELZ, not this almost muted for yours truly. But again, considering the time and what it is that I'm doing at this hour, I certainly can't be my usual self. But I had to put forth a podcast. I've been chomping at the bit. Obviously, a lot's gone on. So I do apologize for not having the podcast last Monday. And I'm not going to have a live stream this Wednesday. If anything, you could go back to the live stream I had this morning. I guess it was a Soto podcast pregame, which I talked about prior to me stepping into the courthouse. So at least you'll have that to chew on. But I got plenty of content on the channel. My numbers are starting to raise a little bit. I guess just a bit of a different tact when it comes to putting out my shorts, detailing all that's happening in the world of sports, using my 1.5-minute, 2-minute shorts. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I implore you to do so. I am just now 8 subscribers away from 800. So I'm slowly but surely getting to 1,000. So if you do not hit that subscribe or that subscription button, please do so. I would sincerely appreciate it. All right, so enough of that. Let's get right to it because, again, there's a ton to get to. And I'm going to start with the NFL because we just had Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. You enjoyed it with your family, friends, or even if you were by yourself. If that's the case, that's perfectly fine too. As long as you're okay, as long as you are content. So I hope you enjoyed that as the holiday season is now pretty much in full effect, especially if you're in the Northeast with the tree up at Rockefeller Center. I think they're going to light it up on Wednesday, which is the same old tree. I get it. That's more for the tourists than it is for the people that live here. So with that being said, the NFL yesterday was not like what you saw there on Thursday and Friday. I'm not going to go back to the Thursday games. There's a couple of themes I do want to get to. And the first one being the NFL South teams, and 2 in particular, AFC, NFC, Houston, and Carolina. Now, what do they mean for the big picture? As we know, Carolina hasn't been to a postseason, it seems like in forever. And the last time they went to a Super Bowl actually was 10 years ago this upcoming year when they were in Super Bowl 50 at Santa Clara. And as we know, the Texans, they haven't been past the divisional round. But considering the start by the Texans, and I'll go there first only because this team started off 0-3, and they didn't have the quarterback for over the last 3 weeks up until yesterday when he returned back into the lineup and did a very good job in his return, considering that the Texans looked like they were going to be left for dead. You know that teams barely make the playoffs when they start off 0-2, let alone even 0-3 for that matter. But give it up because the Texans are right now on a charge, considering that they are 7-5. They're a game behind both Jacksonville and the Indianapolis Colts, and the Colts are fading fast. I told you from weeks ago I was not sold on this team. I didn't believe in them, and part of it was because of the quarterback, Daniel Jones, but to me, they've been more of a paper tiger to start. Remember, I believe they were 7-1, and now they've lost 3 of the last 4. So the Colts, we would think when it's all said and done, they'll probably make the playoffs unless they're just going to be in this free fall where they completely fall out of it. But for the Texans with C.J. Stroud, and you like DeMeco Ryans, the head coach, and they do have that formidable pass rush that's led by Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, and with that type of pass rush that they have and C.J. Stroud back in the mix, and even though they don't have all pros at the wideout position, we know Nico Collins is good, and their running backs, they just kind of piecemeal it together. I don't know if they're going to be a team that's going to get past the divisional round, especially if they do win the AFC South and happen to win that home game, which seems to be a foregone conclusion. But for this team to come all the way back from the dead, to win 7-9 and now be a part of this mix to where they beat Jacksonville earlier this year. Remember, Jacksonville had a 19-point lead in the fourth quarter, and they went past them standing still, and that was with Davis Mills at quarterback. So the Texans, give it up for what they've done here. They put themselves in a good position to continue this charge and see whether or not they could overtake both the Jaguars and Colts when it's all said and done. And as far as the NFC side of things, when you look at the Carolina Panthers, I get it. From one week to the next, they are red hot, and you're thinking, wow, Bryce Young, he seems to be coming out of it with his play, as you saw there in Atlanta where he threw for 440-something yards. But then games against the New Orleans Saints at home where he stunk up the joint. And then last Monday night when they lost in San Francisco, you're like, all right, well, this is the Carolina Panther team that we'd expect. And then yesterday with the Panthers, knowing that they were trying to do their best to keep pace with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they've gotten into a bit of a free fall. And even though they won yesterday against Arizona, a team that obviously is pretty much the walking dead and done for the year, but for the Panthers to host the LA Rams, and we know the Rams have been the hottest team going right now, especially in the NFC, and for them to put up the big numbers. And I understand Matthew Stafford, for him, had an off day. 2 picks, had a fumble, and who knows if it was the whole West Coast to East Coast, the 3-hour time change, because we know historically that's been the case where teams have to come east and play that game. And if you recall earlier this year when the Rams went to Philadelphia, mind you, they did have a 26-7 lead, but they ended up spitting a bit, and they gagged that lead to where the Philadelphia Eagles won that game. Remember the blocked field goal that would have ended the game and would have had the Rams go back to LA with a victory, but because it was blocked and was returned for a touchdown, that was the icing on the tombstone for the Rams that day. And similar to yesterday, and give it up, Bryce Young, another performance that it's weird. 1 week you think, I don't know, is Bryce Young ever going to blossom into that guy coming out of Alabama? We understand he's small, undersized, and even though he has ability and maybe a bit of a situation where his IQ is good, but maybe not suited for the NFL. And then yesterday puts forth a very good performance, and his team did very well. As I pull up the numbers here for the quarterback, was very methodical, 15 for 20, 206 yards, 3 touchdowns. And when you have Bryce Young throw that many passes, 20, and even though Chuba Hubbard had 83 yards on the ground, but to me, it was being able to turn the ball over and have opportunities to where you could play short fields and try to get into the end zone, and that's what they did. And Carolina, listen, they're 7-6. They have their bye forthcoming this weekend. And who knows what's going to happen with Tampa. I'll have to take a look at the schedule later in the week. And, of course, you'll have to stay tuned not only to the channel at YouTube, or I should say on YouTube at JAYREELZ, to see if I will put forth a Thursday podcast. Because, again, all week I'm going to be in jury duty, so maybe I'll do another nighttime deal. I'll probably shorten it up a little bit considering the week may be a little bit slow unless a lot of things happen throughout the course of the week where I just have no choice but to put forth an hour. But we'll wait for that time to come. But for right now, the Panthers, they are in a position to where they are this close for the top of the NFC South. I don't know about a wild card. Wild card may be a bit of a reach. And remember, they still have to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down the stretch of the season with 5 games left 2 times. They're going to play them twice in the final 3 weeks of the season at home on the 21st of December, and then 2 weeks after that, who knows? That could be a Sunday night game, which would actually be kind of weird to see Carolina at Tampa to close out the regular season. But it could happen to where if the Buccaneers, and let's pull up their schedule just for the hell of it. Tampa this weekend, they will, I believe they'll be on the road because they were just at home here. No, in fact, they're going to have the middle of 3 games here in their building where they just beat the Cardinals yesterday, as you know. Then they have the Saints coming in. And then they're going to follow that with a Thursday night game against the Falcons. So they're going to have 2 of the dregs in the NFC South coming into their building. So you would think that they should hold serve and at least have that 1-game lead after this week before going into the following week where everybody will have their buys. No more buys for the remainder of the year after this week's games. So that's what you have there with the teams in the South and the Panthers. All I'm going to say is this. Mathematically, they have a shot. From 1 week to the next, you don't know what you're going to get. I don't think they're going to win a division, let alone get a playoff spot. But you got to give it up for what Dave Canales, the head coach, has done there. This was a team that I couldn't even tell you what their over-under win total was at the start of the year. But let's just say, for argument's sake, if it was 5.5, they've already blown right past that. So things are certainly looking up in Carolina. I get it's a little bit too inconsistent for the NFL fan that can't really take them seriously, but you do have to give them credit to this point, knowing that they're a game over 500 and they're in the month of December. So if you're a Panther fan, you got to be doing handstands knowing that you are a part of the discussion as far as the division goes, and you still have those 2 games against the Buccaneers, which obviously are going to be for the division. So keep that in mind as we move it along. And as far as the games on Thanksgiving, we know about Green Bay, Detroit. Detroit looks like they're in a free fall. And I'm going to tie that in with the Chiefs real quick because the Lions and the Chiefs, those are the 2 teams that a lot of people thought could have played in a Super Bowl there in Santa Clara the second Sunday in February. But right now, it looks like both of those teams may be on the outside looking in. I would lean more for Detroit not making it because their schedule is tricky. The Chiefs, if they can run the table, they could probably get in. They have a little bit soft of an underbelly. Now, I understand they still have to play the Broncos in their building on Christmas, and the Chargers come to Kansas City as well. So there's a couple of interesting games there. They have the Texans, as we talked about before. They're going to go into Arrowhead in a place where they haven't really won as of late, but that's going to be a situation where that's going to be maybe even a loser leaves town match. So whomever loses that game could be on the outside looking in, especially if you're the Chiefs, because they have no tiebreakers. And they really need to win this game because if they lose to the Texans on Sunday, then they forget about it. They've blown all their tiebreakers, whether it's to Houston, whether it's to Jacksonville, whether it's to the Chargers, who they've lost in that first game in Sao Paulo, whether it's to the Bills, as you saw there in Orchard Park about a month ago. So that is a playoff game for the Chiefs. And as you saw there on Thanksgiving, they fell short there in Dallas. But I think the Chiefs probably have a better route to get to January and play in the wild card round than the Lions do. Because the Lions, their offensive line is falling apart at the seams. Frank Ragnow, a guy who was coming out of retirement but failed his physical, that was a disaster. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who hurt his ankle in the game, it looked like it was going to be worse, but he's going to be out 1 to 2 weeks. So to lose a key weapon there on the offensive side of the ball, and they can't keep Jared Goff upright. So that is just a recipe of disaster for a team that 2 years ago went to an NFC Championship game, and then last year was the 1 seed and lost in that divisional playoff to Washington. And this year could be as disappointing as it gets. No playoffs at all. So that's what we're looking at there with the Lions and Chiefs. As far as the Cowboys go, everybody's thinking that, now they're going to go on a run. They could go on a run, but they have so much ground to make up. Because even though at 6-5-1, and you could look at the standings in the NFC, and you could say to yourself, well, the Cowboys are just 1 loss behind the San Francisco 49ers, especially when you're looking at the standings. And for them to be in the hunt here, all right, you could argue that, but remember, they have to have more wins than any of those teams in the conference, and we'll just go to the bottom rung with San Francisco currently at 7. They have 9 wins. So let's say if the 49ers have 11 wins, and you figure they're going to win 2 more games here down the stretch of the season, and they have 4 more games left on the schedule, the Cowboys are going to have to literally run the table. So even if they get to 11-5-1, they could do that. But if the Niners, if they get to 12, they're in good stead, because if they're 12-5 and the Cowboys 11-5-1, they're going to have more wins than the Cowboys, so they're out. So to me, as much as people want to say, oh, the Cowboys on a roll, and they have a huge game on Thursday, especially more for the Lions than it is for the Cowboys, because I think if the Lions lose Thursday night to the Cowboys there at Ford Field, they're going to be done for the year, because they're not going to win a division. The Packers certainly going to have that wrapped up, especially over the Lions. And forget about the tiebreaker because of that tie that they had, but they did beat them 2 games in the season series this year. But going back to the Cowboys, I don't see it. And even though the schedule isn't that tricky, but they do have those 2 games at the end of the year in Washington, who they've been competitive, and at the Giants, who tonight they're not competitive. They're actually getting whacked by the Patriots 30-7 at the half, as I'm in the middle of this recording. But for the Cowboys, yes, they're going to have to run the table and need help. So how I look at it is that you can forget about them even thinking about a playoff spot, let alone they've won 3 in a row and they're flying high. And even if they beat the Lions, remember, the Niners have a bye this week. So it's not as if they're going to lose a game or even gain any ground on them. Yeah, they'll gain a half game, I guess, if they do win. But I don't see it for the Cowboys either. So that's the other thing about the Thanksgiving games, and especially with the teams that played on Thanksgiving, as far as them having a shot there come postseason. And now to get to Black Friday real quick, because for the Bears, after the Ram loss yesterday, when you woke up this morning or went to bed late last night, guess who's the number 1 seed in the NFC? The Chicago Bears. Can you believe it? I can't. To think this is a team coming into this year with the new head coach Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams' second year, and there were a lot of question marks around the former number 1 overall pick of the previous year's draft. And even after that slow start, and you thought to yourself, oh, things aren't going to click in Chicago. And if you have to go back to the NFL preview that I did in early September on the live stream every Wednesday, except maybe not this Wednesday or the following, but you got to stay tuned to that here on the channel, of course. But with them getting off to that slow start, and I thought that they were going to be a bit of a turnaround. Ben Johnson, with that offensive mindset from Detroit to Chicago and implementing that into the system there with Caleb Williams, with DJ Moore, with Cole Kmet, and the rest of their team. They got that dual threat there at running back with Kyle Monangai. I hope I said that right. And DeAndre Swift. And those guys, as you saw there on Black Friday, they ran the Eagles out of the building. And I was just stunned. And I even mentioned this on the channel Friday in my little short analysis, saying that let me see where the Bears stack now. And I understand that the Eagles are a bit of a skid here. But to me, to win on the road late November, and for them to stake their claim as finally beating a formidable team, not only just in the NFL, but just in their conference, they certainly did that and then some. Now, Caleb Williams wasn't really impressive. And the thing about the Bear defense, there are no resemblance of the monsters of the Midway or the 85 Bears. Nuh-uh. But they are larcenists. They love to strip the ball. They are very opportunistic. As you saw there on Friday, getting that interception, as well as that strip there deep in Eagle territory. This was after the bad interception by Caleb Williams, I might add. But the Bears right now are looking very sharp, and they're looking like a team that it looks like they're going to stick around here. And I don't know if they're going to get a 1 seed when it's all said and done. I really highly disagree with that. I don't think they're going to do so, but they're going to make the playoffs. And as far as the Eagles go, the flip side of that, and I talked about this 2 Mondays ago, how everybody's complaining in Philadelphia about this team. But after losing to Dallas and after losing here to the Bears, now you got to gripe because that offense is stuck in the mud. Or as I hate to take this from a one Bill Simmons, it's in clogged toilet mode because they have not got the running game going. I understand that the offensive line has been nicked up all year long. No Lane Johnson and Landon Dickinson, etc. But for this team to not really click, considering what they did last year, and I understand that's last year, this year's different, but Saquon Barkley has certainly not gotten on track. And A.J. Brown had a big game where he had 10 catches, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, but you didn't hear him griping in the postgame because he got his numbers, he got his catches and TDs, but it came in a loss. And then your head coach, speaking of lost, got to add that in there, L-O-S-T, Nick Sirianni, what are you doing? It's 24-9. You get the touchdown to make it 24-15. Late in the fourth quarter, what the hell are you doing going for 2? And I don't want to hear, the analytics say we got to go for 2 because there will be a touchdown back. No, because you just screwed yourself. By going for 2, you missed it, and then you ended up getting the ball back where at 24-15, if it was 24-16, you would have had a chance to march down the field to go for the game-tying score, or at least get to within 2 points, and then get a 2-point conversion there. So this analytic garbage nonsense that these coaches come up with, oh, well, this is what the chart said, and this is what the analytics team said. Nonsense. It's simple math. You're down by 9, get the extra point, so you're down by 1 score. You screw the 2-point conversion, you're down by 2 scores late in the fourth quarter. I mean, seriously? A 5-year-old could figure that out. And people will say, well, JAYREELZ, what do you know about football? I mean, it's simple arithmetic. But anyway, I digress. So that's what the situation with Philly. Now, are they going to continue to fold like this? We saw this 2 years ago with this team. Remember, they went to a Super Bowl the previous year. They started off 10-1, and then they just went in severe meltdown mode to where it ended up in Tampa, where they got blown out there at the New Sombrero, and they were a carcass on the side of the road. And it looks like they're trending that way this year. Now, is that going to happen? It could. I won't go as far as saying that it would, but considering all of the turmoil that has happened on the offensive side of the ball with Jalen Hurts, and he did not play well there on Black Friday, who knows what's going to happen with this team. But I still think, and I still have enough belief and trust that they will pull out of this. And listen, they're not going to get anything close to what they got last year offensively, but you never know, and maybe they'll turn it around this coming week. And then as far as yesterday, to me, I think the big theme, other than what I talked about with the Rams, as well as the Houston and Indianapolis game, well, there's 2 things. One, Denver showed you that they were able to win a game on the road, and they had to sweat it out in overtime, and thankfully that the Commanders didn't get the tying score, and they would have gone for it for the win there at 2 points, I thought, but they were able to stop that goal line stand, and they're 10-2. Now the Patriots are going to be 11-2 after tonight. So, and the Pats have their bye coming up this weekend, which is insane when you think about it, considering the year that they've had. And now, with their win tonight, they will be what? I believe I've won 11 straight. I mean, you can't even make that up. No, it'll be 10 straight tonight because they were 1-2, and they'll be 11-2 after the win here tonight against the Giants. So, when you look at the Broncos, again, I don't fully trust them either. And I'll talk more about this once we get to the final quote-unquote quarter, once we get past this upcoming week. And then, of course, next Monday, I will be here at the desk early in the morning, ready to go, loud and as crazy as ever that you've come to know and love here when you've watched the podcast. But here's the situation where the Broncos, they're keeping pace with the Patriots. Right now, the Patriots are going to have the 1 seed after they win tonight, and we'll see what Denver does over the weekend. But you do like their defense. Their offense could be sporadic. It could sputter at times. And I understand Bo Nix has that little gunslinger mentality, but I don't know if I trust them fully. Once we get deeper into the season, and I'll give you the 30,000-foot view, especially when the seedings get a little bit clearer, but that's going to be mano a mano between those 2 teams down the stretch to see who's going to get that 1 seed. Forget about the Colts. They're done. Right now, Jacksonville has the advantage there in the AFC South as the division leader. So those 2 teams aren't going to come close to Denver or New England, so it's going to be a battle between those 2 teams for the 1 seed. So we'll see how that unfolds. So you had that. And then to me, the other big story out of yesterday, and this is going to hit close to home as a Steeler fan, and I'll try not to unpack this too much because you know me, I could go off the rails here. But that game in Pittsburgh yesterday where they were up 7-0 and it was 7-3 at the half, and then Joey Bosa with the sack on Aaron Rodgers who pretty much knocked him into retirement. But for Mason McCormick, I mean, what are you doing giving up on that play? I mean, seriously, you only have Joey Bosa, a guy when he's healthy could wreck the game. And he certainly did that because the Steelers just fell apart after that. Mason Rudolph had to come in. He threw an interception. That led to a touchdown. And it was just complete disarray. The offense is strictly that, offensive. The defense can actually say, hold my beer, because they were worse than the Steeler offense. And think about this. They gave up almost 250 yards on the ground, which was the most in 50 years. When the Buffalo Bills and O.J. Simpson, yes, that O.J. Simpson ran for, I believe, 222 yards, and they had over 300 yards on the ground that day at the old Three River Stadium. Now, I'm sure you heard, if you watched the game, with Nance and Romo at the helm calling it, where the Steeler crowd, and boy, they were booing throughout, especially in that second half, and the offense, again, was atrocious. But you heard the Fire Tomlin chants. And I've gotten a lot of people, especially on my TikTok, the JAYREELZ podcast, and even here on the channel on YouTube, where they've come out and say, yeah, Tomlin is done. People had said, oh, you don't know anything about football. You're not this, not that. And I just laughed because, come on, I've only been following this team since the mid-'70s, and I've scrutinized this team ever since DirecTV had the Sunday Ticket dating back to the early 90s. So I don't know what these people are talking about because I know in analyzing this team, and I'll break it down and try as concise and put it in a neat package for you, but here's the problem with the whole fire Tomlin thing. Now listen, does he take blame? 1,000%. But is it all on him? It can't be. It's on an aging quarterback, 41 years old, who his shot, his days are done. You could see it. It's right in front of you. The defense is vastly overrated. And I don't want to hear, they did well against the Colts, and what they did against Dylan Gabriel and the Browns. Oh, all right. I'm supposed to puff out my chest for that. But other than that, they've been horrendous. They've been horrible. And just look back to week 1 against the Jets when Justin Fields went up and down the field against them. That is the microcosm of the macro of this entire year, especially when it comes to that defense. And I hate to pick on this guy, but he was one in the offseason when Myles Garrett got his money and TJ Watt came out to say, well, I'm going to sit out. I'm going to be a hold in and wait to get my money because I deserve the same amount of money he gets. All right, well, he got his money, and I don't want to hear about the double teams and the chips and him just not being able to get to the quarterback. And I don't understand he's had his moments this year, but he has been a far cry from what he's been over the last half decade plus. And Myles Garrett, who's playing on a 3-8 team, or 3-9, whatever their record is, the guy has 19 sacks. He's been a monster, and I understand he's more physically imposing than TJ Watt, but he's earned his money. TJ Watt, have you? And listen, you deserve everything that you've gotten. We know about the records, the team records, etc. Over 100 sacks. You surpassed J.J. Watt the previous week in Chicago with your brother there in tow. But the team hasn't won. The team hasn't won because of you. And you have really taken not one step back, 2 steps back. And the same can be said for Cam Hayward. Yesterday getting at it with Josh Allen, and I get it, Josh Allen, for what Cam Hayward said that he need him on a play there. And that's why it got all testy and chippy between Hayward and the reigning MVP. But Hayward, again, he wanted more money in the offseason. I believe he got it. But listen, Hayward's 35 years old. He's long in the tooth. Could he still be that dominant player at times? Absolutely. But come on. The game is starting to pass him by. Father time is starting to catch up here. And I get it. You can't knock Omar Khan for what he's did. I'm going to get to Tomlin. Don't worry. You can't knock what Omar Khan did. He tried. He went out and did whatever he could. Now, Aaron Rodgers was pretty much the last guy standing, falling in his lap. And I get it that Mike Tomlin had a relationship with him and he wanted him on the team. And let's face it, they had no choice. They had no other quarterback to go to. They weren't trading for Kirk Cousins. They weren't going to try to get someone to piecemeal it together. They figured that once Aaron Rodgers comes to his senses, he was going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And he has been. And guess what? It has been an epic failure. That's all there is to it. That's number one. But for Khan to bring in Jonnu Smith, to bring in Jalen Ramsey, to bring in DK Metcalf, to bring in, the roster has talent, but it's all over the map. DK Metcalf has done nothing. He's had moments, but he hasn't really put his fingerprints on any of these games. What, the game in Dublin where he had a big performance against the Vikings, and it felt like it was 100 years ago. Or look at the offensive line. That offensive line, which has been built through the draft over the last few years. I know no Broderick Jones yesterday. And Spencer Anderson, he's done a yeoman's work job for the Steelers, but that offensive line has been horrendous. And with guys like Zach Frazier on the center and Mason McCormick, and you also have Troy Fatanu, who was the number 1 pick the year before, Broderick Jones. These are guys that were built through the draft, and they have not amounted to anything. They really haven't. And listen, Jalen Warren, a nice player, but he's not an every down back. And that's why this roster, it needs to be blown up. That's all there is to it. It's time to blow up this team. And as far as Tomlin goes, I'm going to say this as concise as I possibly can because I know I'm going off the rails and I got to get to other things. Does it all fall on his feet? Well, obviously he's the coach. I get that. And yesterday he sounded defeated in the post-game press conference. If you didn't hear it, go on YouTube. You'll see for yourself. And we're tired of hearing all the components of this team and all the standard is the standard. We know all the Tomlinisms. But here's the thing with Tomlin. The Steeler organization is not going to put him out in the street. Think about it. As long as I've been alive, they've had 3 head coaches. So what do you think? They're all of a sudden just going to punt Tomlin to the curb? That's not going to happen. And then not only that, for all the Steeler fans out there, fire Tomlin, this and that, and they're giving me all these suggestions. What about Brian Flores? I don't think they're going to go there with Brian Flores. I'm sorry. What about Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator out in Los Angeles for the Chargers? He has close connections with Tomlin. You think that the Steelers are going to bring in a guy that has close ties to Tomlin because Jesse Minter's dad coached with him in University of Cincinnati in the late 90s, early 2000s? That's not going to happen. Mike McCarthy, I get he's a local guy, but do you really want to go there with a retread like that? I guess he's the safety net, but I don't know. I don't know if, I guess, but I'm not all of a sudden, ready to go through a brick wall for Mike McCarthy. So we could go through all the names, etc. But here's the bottom line with Tomlin. He's not going anywhere, people. I hate to break it to you. And this is one reason and one reason only. Do you know he signed an extension where his contract runs through not 2026, 2027? You think the Steelers are going to kick him to the curb? Now, if he loses the rest of his games, who knows? Maybe these Steelers have no choice but to fire. But he's not going to go anywhere. If he was going into a lame duck year next year, it's quite possible they would pull the plug. But as of right now, barring just an epic collapse, he's going to be the Steeler coach going into next year. So you got to have to grin and bear it. Now, Terrell Austin should have been out, the defensive coordinator. Please, because that defense is, with that talent, I understand they may be long in the tooth, but still, they should be a lot better than what they are. So Austin, he's got to go. And if you're going to say, well, they never fire coaches during the middle of the season, well, what happened to Matt Canada a couple of years ago when he was the offensive coordinator and they said bye-bye to him? So I don't want to hear that. But the Steelers team right now, they are an abomination. And guess what? It's Ravens week. They go to Baltimore on Sunday, and that is pretty much going to be their season. They lose that game, even though they got the game in Pittsburgh at the end of the year. But if they have any shot to win a division, they got to win that game because they're not going in as a wild card. So that's my Steeler rant. I will shut up and move it along. Now, other than that, quickly with the conferences, it's going to be the Patriots as the one, Denver, Jacksonville, Baltimore right now, Chargers, Colts, Bills. And one thing about the Bills real quick, that was fool's gold yesterday because the Steelers were so bad that it made the Buffalo Bills look that good. Josh Allen did nothing in the game. Yes, I understand he got the touchdown run, the touchdown late, but their offense through the air was terrible. Now on the ground, you or I could have ran through that Steeler defense. That's how bad it was, considering 249 yards on the ground yesterday and 42 minutes time of possession with the ball. I mean, you can't make it up. So to me, if you're a Bills fan, you can't puff your chest out. Yes, you take the win. You hopefully build on that and see where you could go, maybe to try to catch New England, which is not going to happen. But I'm not going to look at that game yesterday, if I'm a Bill fan, a realistic one, to think that, wow, all right, well, we won the game and we were dominant in the second half, but does that mean that all of their ills are cured? Not in my eyes, so you can forget about that. But I think the Bills will be solid there. And think about it, the Texans are a game behind them in the conference, so they do have the tiebreakers there, Houston, because they beat Buffalo on that Thursday night a couple of weeks ago. So you still have to keep the Texans in mind, but if they lose in Kansas City, that'll be a huge blow, and especially if Buffalo wins their game forthcoming. But the rest of the wild card in the AFC, you can forget about. Forget about Pittsburgh, Kansas City. Like I said, they're 2 games back of the Bills now, and they don't have the tiebreaker. And then the Colts, they didn't play this year. No, they did play the Colts, and they beat the Colts, so they do have 1 tiebreaker. But still, if the Chiefs lose on Sunday to the Texans, you could kiss their season goodbye. And forget about the rest of the conference. Although the Bengals at 4-8, they are 2 games behind both the Ravens and Steelers in the AFC North, and they still have to play the Ravens again. So I guess all is not lost in Cincinnati, especially with Joe Burrow coming back and the way he played there on Thanksgiving night. And then you have the Bears, like I mentioned, followed by the Rams, Eagles, Buccaneers. Eagles have the tiebreaker over Tampa as for their win early in the year, so you got to keep that in mind, although they're a game behind them currently in the standings. Then you have Seattle's played well, Green Bay, San Francisco, and as we talked about, Lions, who are a game and a half back with the Niners having their bye this week. Lions have to win on Thursday night to at least be a game back of the wild card. That is enormous. And they're going to play San Francisco later on, which is, I think, the week before. No, let me just double check that. It may be the next to last weekend of the year. Let's see. No, I got my teams mixed up. My apologies. That's the Bears that are going to go to San Francisco, not the Lions, because they're going to play at the Rams. And that game is after the Cowboy game. So their schedule is super hard. Think about it. Home to the Cowboys, at the Rams, Steelers at home. Then the last 2 games on the road. Division games on the road are always dicey. As I mentioned before, Dallas has to go to Washington and the Giants. And people could think that's going to be a layup. Those division games on the road never are. And you know either the Vikings and the Bears may need a game for the 1 seed. So just keep that in mind. But that's what you have there in a big giant nutshell with the NFL. And nothing more else to discuss. Let me shift gears here. I'll stick with the football here because the first thing I want to talk about is Lane Kiffin. And, well, before I get to that, college football on a whole this past weekend was a major disappointment in my eyes. I'm just going to leave it there, put that on hold, and I'll get back to that in a minute. Lane Kiffin. Can you fault him? 100%. But partly it's the system as well. And I say that because for a coach to leave his team right now high and dry, where they're going to host a home game in the playoff in the latter part of this month, And knowing that Ole Miss, who's had 3 of the last 4 years, they've won 10 games. He's been there, I believe, 5 years. Well, not anymore. And the worst kept secret, not only in college football and sports altogether, was him leaving the Running Rebels to go to the LSU Tigers, and him saying that, oh, he put it up to God and he talked to God. I mean, nonsense. We don't want to hear that. Just say that you wanted to go to LSU. You wanted to have a chance to win every year. You want to be amongst the ranks there as far as the SEC goes, as if Ole Miss is a bum job. Think about the job he did there. Now, could you imagine if they go on a roll to maybe a semifinal, or dare I even say a national championship, and he's not going to be at the helm? Please, if they win the title this year, and I don't think they will, they shouldn't even give him a ring. Because remember, because he left for LSU, and because the recruiting process starts on Wednesday, which is the system, and I'll get to that in a minute. But for the scenario regarding Kiffin, how could you leave your team high and dry knowing that they have a great opportunity to go deep into this postseason? They could, I don't think they will, but they could get to a semifinal, maybe even to a national championship. And you're just going to jump ship like that, all because everything you built there. And think about it. He's in a place where he'll have no pressure because he has to go up against the likes of Georgia, Alabama, well, not LSU anymore. And we know how much of a gauntlet, Texas, Oklahoma, we know how much a gauntlet the SEC is. But now he's going to be thrust into the cauldron. He's a guy that's going to have to beat Alabama every year. He's a guy that's going to have to beat Georgia. He's a guy that's going to have to do big things there. And if they don't do big things, he's going to hear it from all corners of Baton Rouge. So you're going literally from the frying pan into the fire in that conference. And I get it. He's going to get paid handsomely. I get it. He's probably going to get better recruits. But it's not as if Ole Miss, he was bereft with trying to get certain players there, considering that they've won at least 10 games 3 of the last 4 years. But now let's go back to the system. It's screwed up. Why is the recruitment process starting on December 3rd? Why isn't this starting after the college football playoff there in the middle of late January? Why are we in such a rush to start recruiting these players? And on top of all that, the portal system, I believe, opens up later on in the month. I don't know the exact date, but it's in conjunction somewhat where players can be recruited on top of the transfer portal, because obviously you have a lot of teams in college football that are going to be done after this weekend. And then on top of that, they're going to start shifting in the portal. So I'm sure some Ole Miss players are going to try to get to LSU and be a part of the Tigers next year under Lane Kiffin and their offensive coordinator. So, of course, they're going to parlay what they did there in Oxford over to Baton Rouge. I'm not saying every player is going to go, but you would think there's going to be a lot of players that are going to jump ship and migrate over to LSU. And that's why the system is awful. They got to renew that. Why is there such a rush? Oh, we got to recruit for spring practice. Spring practice? We're not even in the new year just yet. We're not even at Christmas. I mean, it's just a flat-out disaster. It's a disgrace. College sports is screwed up on so many levels, as you know, and that's nothing that you haven't heard before. But for Kiffin to jump ship the way he did now, and for him to just leave his team high and dry, terrible job on his part. And I get it. Oh, it's a free country, JAYREELZ. He can do what he wants. Yeah, but come on. Where's the integrity? I mean, that guy built something there. It's not as if he was there for 2 years and said, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go to greener pastures. He was there 5 years. He built that program by himself. Had Jackson Dart there. Was the number 1 pick there last year. And now he's going to run over to a Tiger team that, like I said, they're going to be in the thick of things next year. And if they lose 3 games and don't make the playoff, they're going to point at the head coach there. And it's just a matter of time. What did Lane Kiffin? I don't know. He signed an 8-year deal. I guarantee it, by year 4, who knows? Maybe the head of Michigan will say, we don't want Sharon Moore anymore. We want you to be on board as far as our coach. And guess what? He's going to have those starry eyes and visions of blue and maize dancing in his head for national championship aspirations. And he's going to go to Ann Arbor before you know it. Now, of course, that's just me being a fan speculating, and I have no intel or don't think that's going to happen or looking into a crystal ball, but you get what I'm saying. So that's the deal with Kiffin. Let me get to the college football quick. I know come later in the week, if there is a podcast, I'll talk about the conference championships, which mean nothing right now. And I get you have a couple of games. The BYU-Texas Tech game is going to be enormous. And even though Tech beat them earlier this year, but if BYU wins, do you think that they're going to be the team that's going to go in? Could James Madison go in? Does Miami have an outside shot? If Alabama loses? You have all those different combinations. But the games on Saturday were just a major disappointment. And I get it that Oklahoma had to hang tough there against LSU. I get it that you had The other game, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but I didn't even get to the scoreboard. Well, let me go with what I do know. That Ohio State-Michigan game, obviously Bryce Underwood and company, they were no match for Julian Sain, and he had a big game after throwing that pick on the opening drive. And even though Michigan, they had to settle for field goals, which hurt them, but the touchdown by Jeremiah Smith, I know maybe a little bit of controversy because as he broke the plane, and to me, he had possession at that point, but once he got past the plane, the ball was shifting. He stepped out of bounds. It should have been a touchback at that point. But I thought, listen, that was inconclusive. You can't overturn that. And I think as it was, even if Michigan had the ball, I still think Ohio State would have found a way to win that game. As you saw, they win going away. Ryan Day gets the piano off his back as Ohio State finally beats Michigan. But then you had Alabama hanging in against Auburn as Auburn made it interesting. And we know that's always a hotly contested battle, especially when the game is at Auburn. But for the Crimson Tide, they were able to hang in there and win. And Miami blew out Pitt, where maybe Pitt thought they could have an outside shot to beat Miami and certainly upend their playoff hopes. And even though Texas did beat A&M, and A&M will get knocked down from their perch as far as being a team that will have a bye, but Texas, I don't believe that they should even be, despite the fact they have 3 losses. And even though they had that big win, and they also beat Oklahoma earlier this year, but because of the 3 losses, and remember, all those big wins that they had were in their building. They didn't have a big road win against a top-ranked team. We know they lost to Ohio State, and we saw what happened there throughout the course of the year. And then on top of all that, are they really deserving to get that bid as a team that's going to be part of the top 12? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe the committee will find a way for them to get in, especially if Alabama loses. And that, to me, that's going to be the big domino. I get it that if Texas Tech does lose to BYU, that will also throw another wrinkle into it. And I'll talk more about that hopefully come Thursday, or certainly as you get to the weekend if you stay tuned to the channel and subscribe. But college football, to me, I was waiting for the big crescendo. I was hoping to get some upsets. I was hoping to get some turbulence from the standpoint of a college football fan and to see how the committee was going to unravel this. And right now, it's pretty much going to be chalk, I think. So we'll have to wait and see. We still have the games this weekend, which to me don't mean much. Ohio State, Indiana. I mean, even whomever loses that game, and obviously it'd be more for Indiana to win, but at what cost? Does that mean you're going to put your players to possibly get hurt or maybe see Ohio State somewhere down the road in the playoff? I mean, again, those are some of the options that you're going to weigh here, but I'm sure Indiana's going to go balls to the wall, and I would think Ohio State will do the same too, but they have bigger just fish to fry and things to concern themselves more than trying to win a Big Ten championship, which I understand for Indiana, which is a basketball school, I'm sure they would want to win that and beat a real solid opponent, obviously a solid opponent, a superior opponent, I think in my eyes, than the Buckeyes. So you have that working for you there. So we'll keep in mind what's happening as we move it along this week. But I want to get to a few more things before I sign off here. I'm going to shift my attention to the NBA real quick because you have the situation with the NBA Cup, which is not until next Tuesday. I know the team's already in place. I won't unpack that just yet. The NBA right now, to me, there are 3 stories in the NBA that, and I'll go 3, 2, 1 in that order. Number 3, the Lakers look like they're going to have a big year. Obviously, Luka has that eye of the tiger. LeBron has come back and is fitting nicely. Austin Reeves has had a big-time year. And the Lakers, barring any major injuries, they look like they're going to be a team to be reckoned with there in the Western Conference. That's number 1. Number 2 is what's happening in the East with the Pistons. Now, the Pistons have cooled off a little bit. They've lost 2 in a row here, where they lost, I believe, to Orlando and Miami over the weekend. But when we look at what the Pistons have done here to start off the year, they're 17-4. They are 3 games ahead, 2 in the loss over the Knicks as currently constituted. And even though, let me think, they actually have won 2 in a row. Is that right? For whatever reason, I thought they had lost 2 in a row. I know the Celtics hung a loss on them. And they may have played tonight. That could be the reason why. In fact, that is the case. And they actually beat the Heat. I got my losses mixed up, so hand raised high in the air. My apologies, people. They did lose 2 in a row. They lost to the Celtics last Wednesday when they had that 13-game winning streak stopped by the C's in their building. And then they lost to Orlando there on Friday before they won at Miami. And then they also beat the Hawks there tonight. So they got themselves back on a little mini winning streak. But at 17-4, the Pistons, who would have thought that they would have had a tremendous start to their year, especially with that 13-game winning streak to put them at the very top of the Eastern Conference. And then the number 1 story Do I even need to go there? The Oklahoma City Thunder. They are now, and all the NBA, they're past the quarter pole. The Thunder right now, and I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but the Thunder are on a pace to go 78-4. Now, that's not going to happen. But they are 20-1 at the present moment. The team is unstoppable. I mean, what makes you think that this team is going to get into some big losing streak? And they just got Jalen Williams back in the lineup prior to the weekend. I mean, this team started off 8-0. Then they had the one loss to Portland, of all teams. And I know Portland has been respectable. I mean, they haven't been awful as they're even, listen, they're 8-12, but they're at least in the play-in scenario, although not a good record. And since then, they won 12 in a row. And they have the best point differential in the league. They have the best defensive metrics, as you know, even dating back to last year. They've given up the least amount of points in the league, 106.7. And I believe that's Tops, the second team that's closest to them. Let me see. Is it the Rockets at 109.5? And of course, that's Ime Udoka. That's exactly it. Not even the Lakers. And the Lakers are 115. So obviously, defense has been a problem with them, despite them winning 7 in a row. And they're currently 16. Is that right? No, 15-4. But for the reigning NBA champs, they have gotten no hangover, and they have just been on fire. I mean, there isn't anything else to add when it comes to that. And as far as the schedule goes for the next few days, heading into the week, now, you saw these games in progress? Oh, a lot of these games are over with because, remember, it's 10:40, people, when we're looking at, hey, Brooklyn won a game tonight, and even the Wizards won. So 2 of the dregs in the East, they won games tonight. You know what happened there with Detroit winning in Atlanta? They won by 1 point, 99-98. Miami won tonight. Miami's played very well here. Got to give it up as they spanked the Clippers there, 140-123. Orlando won tonight. You have 3 games in progress currently as I speak. But as far as the rest of the week, you have Washington, Philly tomorrow on a Tuesday. Knicks in Boston to play the Celtics. That's an NBC Peacock game. The nightcap will be Oklahoma City at Golden State. Memphis, San Antonio, Minnesota, New Orleans, Portland, Toronto, and then Wednesday at Portland, Cleveland, Denver, Indiana, San Antonio, Orlando, LA, and Atlanta, Charlotte at the Knicks. And Charlotte just played in Brooklyn tonight, right? So they're staying in town here for the next couple of days. So you got that going for you. Brooklyn and Chicago, Sacramento, Houston, Detroit, Milwaukee. Giannis, I know, tried to come back against the Knicks there on Friday, what they lost. And they have not played well. So that's what you got cooking there in the association. I'm sure I could probably unpack a few other things, but as we get deeper, whether it's injuries, things of that nature, I know Anthony Davis and a couple of other players there, we'll certainly touch on that when we get to it. As far as the NHL goes, the only thing that I could really pull from the NHL, and this is the one team that I think, and it's way too early. I know we're now about 25 games in. Let me just make sure, because a lot of these teams have played about 25 games. The Colorado Avalanche, they play 25 games as I lace up the skates here, and I didn't talk about lacing up the high tops before as I talked about the basketball. But for the Avalanche, they play 25 games, and they still have 1 loss in regulation. And let me pull that up. Who did they lose to? That's what I'm curious. Their 1 loss in regulation, was that to San Jose? That was, because it wasn't in overtime. Or maybe it was. They just don't have it highlighted here. Because the Avalanche, they do have 6 overtime losses. So they don't have the graphic up there. But when you have only you play 25 games, you have 1 loss in regulation, that's all you need to know. And that team, flying high, they lead the league in goals scored. And they're the only team that scored over 100 to this point. And again, we're 25 games into the season. Other teams have played 26. A couple have played 27. But Colorado looks like they're going to be the team to beat, not only out west, but maybe in the entire league. I get it. We're past the quarter pole, but still, they've been the most dominant and certainly one that have 18-1-6. I mean, there's your record there. But other teams, I know Edmonton is still in the muck. The defending Western Conference, 2-time defending Western Conference champs. And as I take a look here, Maple Leafs are now in last place. I know I talked about Berube a couple weeks ago. The Panthers, they're at the basement tied with the Panthers there, but I'm not worried about them because I'm sure they'll be revved up ready to go for a three-peat come the middle or latter part of April. Tampa's now in first place as they zoom past the Bruins and Canadiens, and even the Red Wings for that matter, who the Red Wings have now lost 4 in a row. So you got that going on. But that's pretty much your NHL in a big giant nutshell. And now, as I lace up the cleats to conclude here with the baseball, I know you've had some deals here where the Orioles signed Ryan Helsley, the former Met reliever, but thank God. I mean, that was a terrible trade. I talked about that if you go back one of my live streams on the day of the trade deadline on July 31st. I talked about how bad that deal was, and thank God he's gone. Uh-oh, look at this. Are you serious? I can't believe what I'm reading. And you're getting this reaction right now, live and in living color. I cannot believe what I'm reading. The New York Mets and reliever Devin Williams have agreed to a 3-year, $51 million deal, giving the club a replacement for Edwin Diaz should the All-Star closer sign elsewhere. Well, you know what I'm going to say right off the bat? I hate this deal. And why is it that the front office, and I get it that, oh my goodness, I wish I could yell right now, but I'm trying to temper it. I understand that David Stearns has a relationship with Devin Williams from his days in Milwaukee. But what is this with the Yankee relievers and the pitchers? Whether it's Frankie Montas, whether it was Clay Holmes, now we're going to bring in Devin Williams, a guy who was literally hot garbage. A guy who was literally imploding on the mound. Did he not see the games? Did he not even hear from the other side of the borough or the other side of town how the boos were just raining down on Devin Williams? And he's going to go out and sign this guy, and I get it as a backup for Edwin Diaz? I don't even know what to say. I mean, would I rather have Ryan Helsley? Now, listen, Helsley throws straight. Please. I guess I'd have to take him over. Oh, my God. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I'm literally beside myself. And I don't want to knock Devin Williams as a person, but that year last year in a Yankee uniform, and I don't care, he had his moments, but here's all you need to know. Williams, who the year before was, I believe, the reliever of the year, or if not the reliever in the National League. But this is a guy who had an ERA over 4 3/4 and was literally in batting practice. And they could say, the whiff rates and all this nonsense and the bloated ERA. I don't want to hear it. Eye test. What you see is what you get. Even in the final game against the Blue Jays, and I get it that in that Game 4 where Jazz Chisholm had that error, which let the inning get away from them, but for Nathan Lucas to get that base hit off of Devin Williams to, I believe, make it from a 2-1 game to a 4-1 game and end up winning 6-2, I mean, come on. There is nothing I like about this deal. I understand it's 3 years. Let me see. Is there... Here we go. Straight 3-year pact without any opt-outs or options. Includes a $6 million signing bonus over 3 seasons. Now listen, can he find himself back in the National League? Not that matters because they're in elite play, but oh my goodness, this is one. I mean, I understand you need a replacement for Edwin Diaz, but that's not the guy. And if I could tell you one right now, off the top of my head, I couldn't even tell you. And what are they going to do? I heard reports that the Mets are in line to get Framber Valdez 6 years, $200 million. That is a hard pass for me. And I like Valdez, but that guy is hit or miss. When he's on, he's on. And when he's off, that guy's batting practice too. I mean, this is typical. David Stearns. He's going to try to rekindle, I know Devin from Milwaukee and what he did for me there. I don't know. I listen. Anyway, let me just move on. Maybe I'll talk about this in the shorts. I'll even get more of a thought than what I really want to say. And I guess, I'm really sharing my thoughts here. But anyway, I digress. Let me move on. I know that the Red Sox traded for Sonny Gray as they bring him into their rotation. And I think, it's a solid move. I mean, it's not earth-shattering. It's not going to move the needle from a standpoint of, now they got Sonny Gray. No, I mean, come on. Let's face it. That isn't anything that's going to really upset the apple cart there in the AL East. But, he's formidable. He's a veteran, knows his way around the league. Obviously, the AL East when he was a member of the Yankees many years ago. So, yeah, got that going for them. But speaking of the Mets, I want to just touch on this real quick. And to me, is this much ado about nothing? I'm going to say yes. But you've read reports recently, and I didn't really go into the weeds about it. I just kind of pushed it aside. Like, seriously, we're going to go down this road to where there could be some strife between Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, because Soto is more workmanlike, gets to the ballpark, wants to get in the cage, laser focus, precision, etc., where Lindor is a little bit more affable, the smile, the maybe to a certain extent a little flamboyant with the hairstyles and the casual or the whatever it is that he's wearing. I mean, please. And I understand he got into it with Jeff McNeil again. I mean, okay, whatever. Now, the Mets did make that deal, Brandon Nimmo, for the second baseman Marcus Semien, which, if you watch the channel, I posted that last week. I like the deal. I thought that you get out of the back 2 years of that Nimmo deal. I know Semien makes more per year, and I get it, he's 35, and his offensive game has gone down. But you know what? Maybe change of scenery, coming to New York. Maybe he could also be a pseudo leader on the team, knowing that he has a ring on his finger. I get it that Juan Soto also has a ring, but he's not that type of guy. And therefore, he just got here, so he's not going to flex his muscle to be like, hey, I'm the leader of this team. And who knows, maybe that's part of the strife between he and Lindor. I don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't care. Unless it really blows up or it shows that these two guys can't work with one another. Now, we'll see. What does that mean, big picture? Does it mean, who knows? Is Lindor, because of what's happened, could he be trade bait? He still has 6 more years left on his deal. Let me just double check that, because he's traded 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. He still has 6 more years left and $1 zillion. So unless the Mets are going to eat half of that, then maybe they can make that trade, but they're only going to get a big-time contract back, as you know. And that's a big reach right at this very moment. So let's see what's going to happen there with the Mets. But I'm going to be front and center with whatever it is that they're going to do as far as any acquisitions go. But lastly, I want to say this before I sign off. Sunday, you do have the winter meetings in Orlando, where I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more rumblings, a lot more signings. Who knows if some of these big players get signed, whether it's Alex Bregman, whether it's Pete Alonso, the aforementioned Framber Valdez, among others. And it's interesting. Does Alonso come back? And wouldn't that be ironic if Alonso and Devin Williams are teammates, considering ever since that home run that Alonso hit off with Devin Williams in the wild card series, his career has gone backwards. And who knows what's going to happen with Alonso here, as I've talked about before in the past. To me, one last time, if I'm David Stearns, Steve Cohen, this is what I'm giving you. 5 years, $150 million, 4 years, I should say, and the 5th year is a team option. Take it or leave it. And if we're not going to take it by, let's say, December 15th, we're moving on. The Mets have to do that. They can't stand pat. They can't sit and wait around. Draw that line in the sand. Let Scott Boras sweat a little bit. Yeah, maybe he gets his money elsewhere, but he's not going to be a Met. That's how I look at it, and I'm fine with that. I get it that you're going to lose his power. They're not going to lose his defensive ability at first base other than scooping balls, because we know he's not really a good defender. But let's see what happens. As you know, I'll be on top of that. And that'll do it, my good people. Another episode just about in the books. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your understanding. I know this podcast is coming at you late. It's going to be pretty much after midnight after I post this, etc. So I do thank you, just based on the circumstances of jury duty and having to report early in the morning. And obviously my day's getting swallowed up by that. And that's not only going to be this week, but it's going to go into next week. Now, I did tell you that Monday I don't have to go in, which is a good thing, because I could be here and I'll have my podcast pregame on YouTube, my little live stream that I do on top of the podcast. I'll be out around 12:30 there next Monday. But next Wednesday, probably no live stream unless this case gets settled. And you just have to stay tuned to the channel as to what's going to happen here with the podcasts and live streams moving forward, at least for the next 2 weeks. And I'll keep you abreast on everything that's happening in sports with my little shorts, 1 minute, 2 minute videos, so you don't want to miss those as well. And if you want to hit me up with any questions, comments, suggestions, you can do so at the following. Of course, the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. I can't specify that enough. Slowly but surely, the little engine that could, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and beyond, as I'm carving my path and blazing a trail in the space as an independent, full-time content podcaster, creator, whatever you want to call it. Again, this is straight sports talk, real sports talk, no clickbait, rage bait nonsense, as you know. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ podcast. Instagram, JAYREELZ. Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just a number. The old-fashioned way to JAYREELZpodcast@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, in the blood, in the DNA, as you always know. coming at you from all different angles with all different sports, all in one podcast. Where else are you going to get that? I don't know. Well, you're going to get it all right here. So I would consider to keep yourself tapped in, locked in right here, because where else are you going to get nothing but the passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ podcast always comes correct, directed, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ podcast, on the flip, baby.